In 1962, at the height of the Cold War, the world stood on the edge of nuclear conflict. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a silent battle for global influence. Fear shaped decisions. Suspicion fueled strategies. But behind closed doors, a secret plan emerged. A plan so controversial that it remained hidden from the public for decades. A proposal that involved fake attacks, stage violence, and psychological warfare, not against enemies abroad, but potentially against its own people. This was Operation Northwoods, a military proposal that raised serious ethical questions and revealed just how far governments were willing to go during the Cold War. This is the story behind one of the most shocking secret military plans ever created. The early 1960s were defined by fear. After the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro established a communist government just 90 miles from the United States. American leaders viewed Cuba as a direct threat, a potential ally of the Soviet Union capable of hosting nuclear weapons. Tensions escalated quickly. The failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961 had embarrassed the United States and strengthened Castro's position. American military leaders began searching for new ways to justify stronger action against Cuba. They wanted public support. They wanted international approval. And they wanted a reason powerful enough to convince the world that military intervention was necessary. Inside the Pentagon, senior military officials began developing unconventional strategies. One proposal would become known as Operation Northwoods. The plan was drafted by the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military leaders in the country. Their goal was to create incidents that could be blamed on Cuba. These incidents could then be used as justification for war. But the details were disturbing. Documents later revealed proposals for staged attacks, including fake acts of sabotage, simulated terrorist incidents, and even the possibility of fabricating evidence of Cuban aggression. Some versions of the plan suggested creating false narratives involving hijacked aircraft or attacks on military targets. The objective was not simply military victory. It was psychological manipulation. Public opinion was seen as a battlefield. According to declassified documents, Operation Northwoods outlined multiple scenarios. One idea involved staging attacks on American military bases and blaming Cuba. Another suggested orchestrating fake rescue missions to generate sympathy and fear. There were discussions about using media coverage to shape public perception. The plan relied heavily on deception, creating events that looked real but were carefully controlled. It reflected the extreme mindset of the Cold War era, where the threat of communism justified increasingly aggressive strategies. To its supporters, the plan was a strategic necessity. To its critics, it crossed moral boundaries that should never be considered. In 1962, the proposal reached the desk of President John F. Kennedy. The Joint Chiefs presented Operation Northwoods as a viable strategy to confront Cuba, but Kennedy rejected the plan. He refused to approve operations that involved deception against civilians or fabricated attacks. The proposal was never implemented. Instead, it was classified and hidden from public knowledge. The world moved forward without ever knowing how close such a plan came to becoming reality. Later that same year, the Cuban Missile Crisis would bring the United States and the Soviet Union closer to nuclear war than ever before. But Operation Northwoods remained buried in secret archives. Operation Northwoods highlights the psychological warfare that defined the Cold War. It wasn't just a conflict of weapons. It was a conflict of narratives. Governments understood the power of perception. Winning public support could be as important as winning battles. Fear shaped policy. Suspicion influenced decisions. And secrecy allowed controversial ideas to be discussed behind closed doors. The Cold War blurred the lines between reality and strategy. It created an environment where extreme proposals could be considered legitimate options. Today, Operation Northwood stands as one of the most controversial military proposals in modern history. It was never carried out, but it revealed the pressures and fears that shaped global politics during the Cold War. The plan forces us to ask difficult questions. How far should governments go to protect national security? What ethical boundaries must never be crossed? And how many other proposals remain hidden within classified archives around the world? History is not only defined by the wars that happened. Sometimes it is defined by the plans that almost did. This was Behind the Timeline.